Hi, hello, my name's Ollie Bliss and this is my channel Bookdraw. For those who don't know, I enjoy looking at queer fiction and occasionally I create images out of them. Today I am doing my wrap-up from Victober, where I managed to actually read through 3 books. I wanted to read 4, but I didn't actually end up managing to do Middlemarch, and just because that one was a bit more meaty than I originally expected. And so unfortunately I never got round to that. However, I did manage to do 3, and it meant that I also managed to do some of the challenges as well. So I better go straight into it. But just to highlight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give a quick overview of each of the books that I did read, and then I will go into more spoilers in the second half. So if you want to stop yourself and not get into the rest of it, feel free to just stop. But for now, I will just go through each of the individual books and give you a little bit of a flavour for the overview of the books. So starting with Jude the Obscure, which was by Tom Hardy and published in 1895. So this book was 528 pages long, which made me reach the challenge for Books and Things, where you're looking for a book which is over 500 pages. So you follow the story of Jude, and Jude has these designs to get university educated, and he wants to be a part of the church, and he has all these kind of ambition and drives, and you watch him go through a series of events where he doesn't actually get to where he wants to go, and he's faced with multiple barriers. And a lot of the book feels like it's a commentary on the social structure at the time, and the difference between class and how those create barriers, and institutions like marriage, which also cause different types of complications, which I won't go into. But mainly you follow Jude, who has a relationship with Arabella. He also has a strong bond with Sue, who is his cousin, and their lives are entwined with another character called Richard. What I will say in terms of the themes of the book, they do come across really strongly and incrementally, and you do kind of get sucked into the world. I find myself forming a fond bond with Jude because he has a lot of quite open principles, and he has an inquiring mind, and he wants to become educated, and he wants to live a fulfilling life, and it's just the things and situations around him which constrain him. Which I thought was some really interesting messaging, which would have been coming out at that time, and how it's actually trying to create a conversation and an inquiry to why are these kind of set restrictions, and what type of impact does that have on a person. So I did really appreciate what those comments were, and when I was doing a bit of a search online, it seems to kind of have some parallels to Tom Hardy's life in terms of some of the things that he either witnessed or faced himself. So I thought that was very cool. What I will say is it's not a particularly nice book, and it's quite depressing towards the end. And I wasn't expecting it to go down such a sharp slope, such a dramatic slope. But Sue's character has a lot of queer-coded language around her. So the next book which I want to discuss is Jayne Eyre by Charlotte Brontë. Now this is my first Charlotte Brontë which I've ever read. This also hits on a couple of the challenges in terms of this being over 500 pages, and also beyond the pages, new female Victorian author. So I managed to hit a couple of those on that. So what I also found out when I was reading into Jayne Eyre a bit afterwards is that she actually started writing Jayne Eyre really closely to where I was living in Manchester. So there's a pub which is called the Salutation pub, which was like a pub lodge back in the day. This book was published in 1847, and I've been to that pub, so it's really kind of weird and funny to be able to go, oh, Jayne Eyre, she was writing here. So I'll add some pictures so you can take a look at what that pub looks like. But it kind of makes me want to go back there now and just have a drink and be more observant to the inside, because maybe there's a bit more about it which talks about her, but I don't know. But so that kind of excited me to know that she was living so closely there. So Jayne Eyre is written from a first-person perspective. You follow her through different stages of her her life. It's not her whole life, but through the predominant areas of her life, I say. So you follow her during her upbringing, in her childhood, and then she goes on to school. She is then later on a governess, and she's looking after a child, where she meets a particular character. There is what happens and why she leaves that location, and then there is what happens when she comes back to that location. So without going into any spoilers, that is the kind of general layout of Jayne's kind of character in general, and what she gets up to. What I found about the book, which was most kind of compelling and exciting, is her kind of authentic nature and spirit, where she calls out things which she doesn't like, and she's very honest. She's not despiteful at all to other people, but she has her kind of true values which she carries for herself, and she wants to do things a certain way, and she also wants to be as independent as possible. But she's not kind of a greedy person or a vain person at all, and she just wants to kind of live her life and live it well. And I like the fact that she was doing little drawings, and she kind of goes off into her imagination, and found all those things quite relatable. And there's some particular scenes where she comes up in confrontation, and she handles them so eloquently and so well, that you just end up admiring her more and more. So the third book which I want to talk about is Prince Alberic and the Snake Lady, which was written by Vernon Lee. So Vernon Lee was a pen name for Violet Paget. So they were in lesbian relationships with 3 different people. One of the ones which really caught my eye was another author called Amy Levy, who actually died at 27 after suffering some major bouts of depression, and was progressively going deaf. But they had a romantic relationship, and there were a couple of poems which made reference to Vernon Lee and the new love, new life. So Levy's first novel was titled The Romance in the Shop, and this was expressed as an early style of a new woman's novel, which was basically where women were becoming more radical in their thinking and their attitudes towards equality. And her book focused on 4 sisters who were trying to run a business in London. And it's kind of about the troubles that they experience because they are women. So I'm kind of drawn in and interested in kind of finding out a bit more about her and her writing through this process. And this is something which I really enjoy about doing Victober, because it does introduce you to other areas of writing which you might not have experienced before. So I've been kind of glad to stumble upon that little gem alongside it. But so going into the actual story, the Alberic Prince and the Snake Lady, this basically was a bit of a poor read for me. I didn't actually enjoy the majority of it. I'd say the first 30 pages, it's only 56 pages long on PDF. There are a couple of pages missing when you're reading that, so you might feel like you're missing it if you are reading it through the PDF, but that's the only way that I've been able to kind of find the source material. But the first kind of third of the short novel, I felt like it was just padding, and there was a lot of flowery language, and there was a lot of long descriptions about different things which are in the house and the tapestry, and I was just like, I don't need to know this. This isn't driving the story forward. We can move on, people. But basically, it's about the 2 key characters. You've got this young prince and you've got this snake lady, and there's a legend and this story that's wrapped up behind it. And it's going through generations of these Alberic princes and how they kind of get introduced to this snake lady. Not to get into kind of spoiler territory, is that the Duke is trying to encourage the prince to become married, and there is a tension there, and it's kind of about his court and council that look after him. There's a Jesuit, which is basically a priest, and a jester and a dwarf, and they kind of feed him information, and it's kind of about their relationship between each other and against what is going on with the young prince, and he's trying to resolve this mystery about who the snake lady is. So that's kind of an unspoilery summary of what was going on there. Okay, so that's the end of the first part, which is where I'm talking about non-spoilery summaries of the books which I have read. Stay around for part 2, and I will give you my full spoilery insights to everything that I read. Anyway, for now, this is enough from me. Take care, and I'll see you all again real soon. Okay, bye.